When nature falters, we take over. Here is Prashanth Fertility Research Center and Prashanth Multi-Speciality Hospitals offering you the best in reproductive health care.
Hello viewers, the joy of motherhood is the ultimate experience in a woman's life. We at Prashanth Fertility Research Center make your baby dreams come true. We have a multidisciplinary team which offers the ultimate and the best in reproductive health care. Our innovative technologies and surgical techniques gives pregnancy rates which are unsurpassed. We are now walking into the most important part of Prashanth Fertility Research Center, the IVF lab. We are now looking at the process of egg collection. The patient has been prepared with hormones so that she has something like 10 to 12 follicles. A follicle is a fluid-filled space with the egg inside. We are now looking at the ultrasound monitor and you see the needle going inside the follicle. Now, follicle after follicle, the needle enters. You see the follicle getting empty as the fluid gets sucked into the needle. One after the other, the follicles are entered into and the fluid is sucked and handed over to the IVF lab. We now look at a computer-assisted semen analysis. The scientist has now put a drop of semen under the microscope. The sperm class analyzer now takes over and starts analyzing the semen for count, structure and motility. You now look at a lot of moving sperms under the microscope. The sperm class analyzer now looks at the count and the motility, and these two are now represented in the report as the count and the movement of the sperm. We are now looking at the computer, selecting the sperms one after the other, and after an adequate number of sperms have been selected, the computer now starts analyzing the structure of the sperm. The morphology is studied in detail, and after studying all the sperms in the field, it gives the result as percentage of normal and abnormal sperms. The computer now starts analyzing the DNA sperm integrity, which is very important because it gives us a good idea about the capacity of the sperm to produce a pregnancy. Meanwhile, the husband produces the semen sample. The sperm is prepared and kept inside the centrifuge so that it is kept ready. You are now looking at the follicular fluid being placed inside the test tube warmer. The scientist now hands over the follicular fluid to her colleague who is now sitting in the humidicrib. The humidicrib is exclusive equipment which actually creates an atmosphere which is similar to that seen in the fallopian tube, maintaining the same temperature, the humidity and the gas concentrations. The eggs are now studied under the humidicrib and identified, and you now see the doctor placing the eggs in culture media inside the incubator. What we are looking at now is called an ICSI microscope. An ICSI microscope is a very high definition microscope where you look at the sperms, you look at the eggs, you inject the sperm into the egg, you look at the embryos through this microscope. We are now looking at the technique of sperm capturing. The new MC technique means that you are selecting structurally normal sperms. Some men have a high percentage of abnormal sperms and we want to select the best to give the best results. The MC is intracytoplasmic morphologically selected sperm injection. It's a new computer-assisted technique to identify morphologically normal sperms. The sperms are viewed at a magnification of 6000 by digital image processing and image enhancements. The defects in sperm heads, shapes, size, and abnormalities associated with DNA fragmentation are identified. You now see several sperms being studied. With IMSI, the implantation and pregnancy rates are significantly higher. And most important of all, IMSI decreases miscarriage rates because you are selecting best sperms to fertilize the egg, thereby creating normal babies. We are now looking at the technique of intracytoplasmic sperm injection. You see the sperms loaded inside the needle. The needle is now piercing the membrane of the egg and going into the cytoplasm, which is the substance inside the egg. The sperms are now injected into the cytoplasm of the oocyte, and you now see the needle coming out of the egg. We are now looking at the embryo the next day. The day 1 embryo you see with 2 pronuclei, the day 2 embryo with 2 cells, the day 3 embryo with 8 cells, the day 4 embryo with a cluster of cells, the day 5 embryo is called a blastocyst. You also see a hatching blastocyst there, where the embryo is actually coming out of the shell, and this helps implanting into the lining of the womb. You're now seeing the laser assisted hatching, where the laser is actually shot on to the shell of the egg, and this helps the embryo to come out and to implant onto the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus. You're now looking at the diode laser, which has helped in improving pregnancy rates. You're seeing the laser beam shooting on to the zona, and this thins out the zona so that the embryo is now able to come out easily and to implant onto the endometrium. This is particularly useful in the older women and those with repeated pregnancy failures. You're now looking at the scientist loading the embryos onto the catheter. The best embryos are selected for transferring into the uterus. She now carries the catheter towards the gynecologist, who will now put the embryos into the uterine cavity. The lining is all there, triple line, excellent lining, ready to receive the embryos. We are now looking at the computerized freezing machine. What do we do with our excess embryos? We have to freeze them for use during a subsequent cycle. Now, the computerized freezing unit is one of the best equipments in our armamentarium because it has greatly improved our pregnancy rates, and with our frozen embryo transfers, we get pregnancy rates which are equal to fresh transfers. The freezing unit is loaded with straws which are coded and labeled, and once the mechanism of freezing is over and the program set is all complete, the embryos are taken and loaded on to the embryo tank. The embryo tank is maintained every 3 to 4 days, where the liquid nitrogen levels are checked, and checks are there to make sure that the systems are in place. This is a cryologic freezer which we use to freeze sperms. At Prashanth Fertility, we have a backup sample for every patient. There are some men who cannot produce a sample on that day, and this is very useful for that sort of situation. Wonderful! The patient is pregnant with twins. You see the pictures of a 6-week pregnancy and 9 weeks pregnancy. The babies have now grown. They are 32 weeks. And you see the 2 lovely babies here. Look at the wonderful smile on their faces. Isn't it worth all the effort? Lady has now come to deliver her babies. Here is the heartbeat of the babies being monitored. She delivered by cesarean section. Good morning, Ramya.
Good morning, doctor.
A big congrats to you.
Thank you.
You have 2 babies, a girl
2
and a boy.
babies. Wow.
This is your girl.
Oh. Hey. She resembles you a lot, huh?
And here's your lovely boy. A lovely family.
Oh. How sweet. I'm so happy. This is the best day in my life. Hey, look here.
Thanks for all the support. Thank you.